Well, hello, welcome back. Survival Saturday with Johnny Tiger on June 3rd, 2023. And yes, we are going to be looking at another little knife that is really, really interesting. I've been wanting to do this particular knife for quite a while. I have owned this knife for a handful of years, and there's some good and there's some bad, and we'll talk about them today. What we are looking at right now is the gray aluminum handle of my Schrade Viper Generation 3. Schrade Viper Generation 3. That is quite a mouthful, but come on. It have such a cool name. When you pull out the knife and you go, this is my Civivi blah 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 G245 or something like that, people is like, huh? Or you pull out your knife and this is my uh cold steel pygmy Tonto. Yeah, that doesn't sound very impressive. I'm just making up those names, by the way. They don't really have those. Uh, but like when you pull out the knife and you say, "Hey, check out my Schrade Viper." Yeah, right there. There's a nice ring to it, right? Like I think that is just like the kind of name that when I hear a knife that have a name like that, I kind of automatically, oh, I wouldn't mind own one of those. And then when you add onto that Trade Viper Generation 3, yeah, now all of a sudden there's a kind of a modern twist to that name. It just sounds really modernized, really high tech or something. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble on for too long, but anyway, I'm just saying I really love the name of this knife, the Schrade Viper Generation 3. A little bit of background for those of you who don't know why this knife is quite a big deal. The Schrade Viper uh, knife are quite unique in that they are not folding knife. These knives are assisted opening OTF. OTF stands for out the front. So this knife come out the front like those cool switchblade that you see in movies, but it is not like not really a switchblade, right? We'll get into more of that in a little bit. So this is one of the very very few OTF out the front knife that's legal to carry or own in Canada. Now, depending on which city you're in, this might still be illegal because of the size of it. It is a pretty sizable knife. So you want to double check your law. And also, the version I have here is double-edged, and that is quite iffy, where legality is concerned in many, many places. So you also want to be careful with that. But strictly speaking, as an OTF knife, it is one of the very few OTF knives that is legal, or it doesn't get hampered by the OTF knife law. And there's a very good reason for that. So let's take a quick look at this little beauty. The Viper Gen 3, we just call it the Viper because Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, they're basically the same. They're just like minor changes. Uh, this version here has a gray aluminum handle, and the handle is quite sturdy, and I love the texture on this knife handle. This has some beautiful texture on it. Like it just feels really good in hand. Uh, I won't lie, it feels a little cheap. Okay, like if I take this and bang it on the counter or I uh, heft it in my hand, this doesn't feel like an expensive knife. The handle is light, but it's very durable. But because of the way it's constructed, obviously it's hollow inside, so it doesn't feel very solid. Uh, or sturdy. But I have never had this handle fail me before, so I think it's fine. It just and also when you shake this handle, let me bring this closer to the microphone. I don't know if you guys can hear that. When you shake the handle, there's kind of rattling. The knife rattles inside the grip. Okay, so that's another thing you want to take into consideration. It does rattle a little bit when you shake it, uh, but it is pretty secure. Now, uh, on the back side of the grip, there's this deep pocket clip. This pocket clip is for uh, right hand use. I mean, I guess you can carry on the left side if you don't mind having to juggle your knife a little bit when you pull it out. But this is more designed for right hand carry, and I don't think this is reversible. At least I don't see anywhere on this knife that you can reverse the clip. So I think it's just the way it is. Now this pocket clip is very deep. So when you put this knife in your pocket, it's really hard for anyone to see it. Like there's most other knife I've handled, when you put them in your pocket, there's like 1 inch of the knife will stick out. But this one, no. This one, the only thing that's going to stick out a little bit is this tiny glass breaker on the back of the hilt. Yes, this knife does come with a glass breaker. So this glass breaker is something that you got to be a little bit careful of, right? When you have this knife clipped to your pocket and then you reach in to grab it, sometimes you forget the glass breaker is there and you'll scratch the heck out of your hand, right? So that's something to keep in mind. The little glass breaker it's going to be the first thing that your hand encounter when you reach for that knife. So remember that. Uh, on the top of the knife, there's this little slider, and we'll go into that a little bit more when we are ready to open the knife. On the side, this is a good feature. This has a little safety lock, like a safety on the gun. When you push it up, that's unsafe. And then when you push it down, that's when you can deploy the knife. And how you deploy the knife is you put your thumb on the back of the slider and then you push it out. And when you get it moving, the spring assisted knife will pop out the front like this, right? Let me show you guys that again. Okay, so we put the safety on. Now we take the safety off, put our thumb on the back of the slider, and pew, just like those movie Switchblade, right? Once it's fully open, it will lock into place. And how you un like how you uh, put it back is there's a little lever in front of the slider, between the slider and the blade here. There's a little button here. You push that down and then you pull the slider back. Okay, when you push this lever, it will disengage the lock. So allow the slider to come back, and you want to pull that all the way back until it click into place, and then put the safety on so this won't pop open in your pocket. Now, one thing I have noticed sometimes, if I am trying to use this knife and I disengage the safety and then I pop the safety, and I try to push the slider forward. But if I am not very assertive, like when I push the slider, if I leave my thumb on there for a little bit too long, then it doesn't click, it doesn't lock properly, right? This time it did, but the previous time it didn't, right? So when you do this, you want to make sure that you give it a nice assertive nudge with your thumb and just let go with your thumb. Take your thumb off. Okay, don't leave your thumb on. Otherwise, it doesn't have enough force to lock into place, right? Now, in cases of it doesn't lock into place, what's going to happen? Look at this. Yeah, it will just bounce in and out like this, like one of those fake training knife, right? This is not fake, however, this is super sharp, so don't mess around with this. In case when it doesn't lock and it just sits there, just take your thumb and push it forward and it will click into place. That's what you need to do. Right? This version I have here has a like I said, gray aluminum handle, and the blade itself is double-edged. The blade is black, and so this is a pretty stylish knife. The the bottom edge has partial serration, like this, down here, partial serration. The top side is all straight edge, so you get the best of both worlds. And the cool part is, this slider, once it's engaged, act as a guard, a sort of a guard. Yeah? So if you get carried away with your knife, it's not your hands shouldn't slide onto the blade. Although you still want to be very careful because on the bottom side there's no guard, right? So if you get carried away and yeah, see how my finger will just trail onto the blade. Be very careful with that because there's no forgiveness there. There's no guard there. On the top, no problem. On the top, there's my thumb will get stopped by the slider, but on the bottom, I mean, there's a slight rise before it gets to the blade, but that hardly counts for anything. Okay, so I think that is one of the negative I will say about this knife. It's at the bottom part. There's no guard, and if you're not careful, let's say you put this on the table, and then you go do something else, and you come back and you grab it, and you don't grab it carefully, your index finger might go onto the serration of the blade and you're going to cut yourself, right? So please observe knife safety. When you're not using this, don't just leave it open like that. When you're not using this, take the extra step, retract the blade, put the safety on, put it on the table, right? Your hands, your fingers, even your feet will thank you for it. Why your feet? Because if you knock it off the table while it's open, it might impale your foot. That's why. Now the Schrade Fiber Gen 3 has a blade that is constructed from, I think it's a 4034 stainless steel, and the blade itself is about 3.5 inches long, so pretty sizable knife. The handle it's about 5.3 inches, so the entire knife. Let me give you guys a comparison. Look at this, all right? I'm holding it in reverse, and you see it's how far up my arm this goes, right? It goes from my fingertip all the way up to part of my arm, like it's definitely a pretty big knife, right? This is a pretty big knife when you deploy it. Fully extended, it's almost 9 inches long. And again, it feels very good in hand, and it's totally operational with one hand, operable with one hand, although it does take a lot of getting used to. And this is probably one of the biggest drawback of this knife that I'm going to talk about. Uh, the position of the slider and the safety, right? It's way back here where the knife would normally be uh, in your palm. Like when you grip the knife, like a regular holding, when you hold the knife regularly like this, right? Your thumb, your fingers are nowhere near the slider or safety, right? So for you to actually work with the slider and the safety, you got to work your hand back to the butt end of the knife, and there's hardly anything to hold onto here. So you might drop it initially if you are trying to do this one-handed, and then you got to take your thumb, flip the safety, and then turn the knife so you can get your thumb on the back of the slider, and then pop this open. Right? This is honestly one of the slowest knife to uh, deploy. Like of all the knives I collect, no matter it's fixed blade, folding blade, switch blade, whatever, the Viper Gen 3 ironically is the slowest of all bloody knife to uh, to 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 uh, uh, deploy. Ironic because Viper implies that it should be really fast. When you hear Viper, you're thinking lightning fast, but this thing is not, okay? And that's partly why it's legal. It's not illegal like other out the front switchblades because one of the reason why a lot of people have issues with out the front OTF switchblade knife is how quick they are. You pull it out and then you're suddenly in someone's face with your knife, and that creates a problem. But with a Viper, with the Schrade Viper, that's not going to be a problem. Trust me. You pull this out, you got to mess with the safety and pop this open. You're going to take at least 1 to 2 seconds and plenty of time for someone to jump in and knock it out of your hand if you have evil intention, right? It's not a knife for quick draw. Even if you even if you're stupid enough to want to carry this in your pocket, and let's say you decide, well, I want it to be quicker, so I leave the safety off. I don't put the safety on. I really don't recommend that. But let's say you do. You leave the safety off, you pull this out of your pocket, and then now you still have to take your thumb and get a slider. It's just so awkward. It's just so awkward. It's not going to be. It's not never going to win any kind of quick draw competition. Now, some people might say, well, what if I do a reverse draw? What if I do commando style? Okay, I pull this out commando style. Still, I got to disengage the safety. Oh, and that's not even working properly. And then I still have to turn this in my grip and get my thumb there. And no, I didn't cut myself. But what happened there, and this is why you do not want to reverse commando grip this or commando grip this, right? When you commando grip this, and when you disengage the slider, that slider shooting forward is going to pinch the hell out of your hand and your fingers, unless you are so careful that you don't get your finger near the spine of the knife. Uh, which, when you're in a hurry to pull out your knife, you're not going to be thinking about that. So that slider is not going to work properly in the commando grip either. So this knife it's almost like they designed this to be slow. They designed this to be uh, 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 hard to operate, so it's not going to be some kind of a killer switchblade on the street. So now that we established that this knife is not really that speedy, it's never going to win any speedy contest. How good is it as a knife? Well, let's look at our little cutting test. It definitely looks like a very impressive knife with serration and plain edge and a double edge and all that stuff. So let's see how it performs. First, let me show you guys just how deep this sits in the pocket. I have it clipped to my pocket right now, and I imagine most of you wouldn't even be able to see this, right? I'm holding out the pocket. I'm holding out my vest. It's clipped right here. Right? I imagine it's really hard to see because it's in there really, really deep. Like the only thing that's peeking out of my pocket is this, like barely half an inch. That is like the little glass breaker. Which again, let me say this: when you reach in for this knife, be careful because sometimes when you're in a hurry and you reach in, the first thing that's going to scratch the hell out of your palm is that little glass breaker. So be careful when you do that. So you reach in, you grab this, and then this is going to come out. Right? This is in there really, really deep and really tight. So again, even the way this is designed, it's good for concealment, but it's lousy for any kind of quick draw that you're trying to do. And then after you finally get it out of your pocket, you gotta disengage and then flip and then push the slider, and then now we have a knife. Okay, now once it's open, this is great. Once it's open, I will say this is like once you get this to finally open, I imagine this is quite intimidating as a self-defense tool because it's long, it has a great reach, it has a really scary looking profile. It just looks like a dagger with a thick wide blade with double edge, and you just imagine that if you thrust with this, it's going to whatever you thrust it into, and it's very well balanced. So I imagine even for throwing, even for switching grip, forward grip, backward grip, switching hand. Okay, this is just very comfortable to hold once you get this to open. Now we have this box over here. This is a box, leftover action figure box, Fortnite action figure, and we are going to see how this knife perform on some a thick cardboard box like this. So we can see that penetration-wise, this is definitely a very good penetration power for a knife. Let me get closer to the camera. However, if we actually want to cut properly, see how you kind of squeak with that cardboard? And we can use the serrated side, of course, and just saw with that. And yeah, it goes through the material pretty good. But because of the way the blade is shaped, this is this blade doesn't really have a belly on it. It's a like basically a spear shape, a spearhead. So it's great for penetration. Like I don't even have to use my full arm. I just use my wrist, and this will sink into a material, no problem. Right? Great penetration on this. This thing is made for one thing really. It's made for stabby. Like it doesn't take any kind of effort for this to go into the material, right? Now, if you actually have to slice with it, that's when you're going to run into a little bit of trouble because it doesn't have enough of a belly on it. Uh, so even with the serration, when you cut, it just doesn't have enough of a cutting force or enough of a uh, blade on it to really get a good cut with. So in the end, how good is a Viper Gen 3 in my humble opinion? Well, we'll as usual we look at it. Is it a good utility knife? Is it a good survival knife? Is it a good self-defense knife? Self-defense knife, I think if you know in advance that you're going to get attacked and you get this thing ready, then maybe. Like once you get it open, it definitely feels good in the hand, and its amazing stabbing power uh, make it fantastic for ending the fight in some very nasty way. Although you probably would end up going to jail because you just murdered the heck out of somebody. Stabbing knife, that's where the problem is. When you stab someone, especially with something like a Viper Gen 3, that person is unlikely going to make it, right? Uh, this thing just has such uh, among the penetration force capability to it. So I would say maybe yes or no, but I would really still lean toward no. It doesn't make a good self-defense knife just based on it's so hard to deploy, it's so hard to pull out, it's so hard to activate. Uh, so that and then there's no guard. There's no guard on the bottom part of the knife. Um, the fact that it does have a glass breaker on the back does make it kind of good for survival. So as a survival knife, I can see this working. Uh, you know, but again, my major concern with this being a survival knife would be how would you even clean this, right? Like I can imagine that you're out there in the wilderness and you get this knife all gunked up in sap or dirt or water or uh, whatever you used to got a fish and now you got fish gunk over it. And I imagine this is going to not function very good. Maybe the lock, the safety will jam up. Maybe the slider will refuse to engage. Maybe the freeing the lock mechanism will mess up, right? So I think as a survival knife, I would again not recommend it, but just because it is too many moving parts. There's too much that can go wrong with a knife like this for survival. Not something that you want to count on in a outdoorsy situation. Now, if you just want a survival knife to keep in your car, in your bailout bag, just in case the world ends and you need a little uh, knife for that, I think this can be okay. I think it got good grip. It got a glass breaker. It's definitely got enough of a body on this. Although I imagine tying this to a spear would be kind of difficult because it doesn't really have any point on it for you to lash it to a spear, unlike some of the knives we've seen before. So yeah, I mean, I can see this working if you want to tie it to a stick and turn this into a spear. These notches on the side of the handle, on the top and bottom of the handle, I can see these will be great for uh, winding a rope around and just tie this to a stick. And with the beautiful and aggressive spear point that's already on this knife, I can see this being quite a good spear actually. So while I think there's too much that can break in the wilderness, I think this has some potential to be an urban, big city, keep it in your car, keep it in your bailout bag style of survival knife. Now, utility knife. How use it as a utility knife? Well, it's not bad. It's not bad. Like we already demonstrated, it has great penetration ability. It has combo edge, so serration here, plain edge here. Uh, it, it's uh, it's feel very comfortable in the grip, so your hand is not really going to fatigue that much. And if you're just using this as a utility knife, then you don't need it to be really quick. Maybe something just keep it on your desk, right? Keep it safe, keep it on your desk, and then whenever you need to open a box or whenever you need to open a package, you can grab this really cool looking Schrade Viper and take your time, pop it open, and go to work on the package. And after you're done, you retract it, put the safety on, and then go back to do your other things. Yeah, so I think as a utility knife, it has good potential. I think it pack enough uh, functions, enough things, different things that it can do, that it's not bad as a utility knife as long as speed is not something that you're going to look for. With that said, it doesn't function very good as a chopping or slicing knife. So if the kind of utility you'll be doing require you to slice things and cut cables or uh, I don't know, like carve wood or stuff like that, then this is probably not the knife for you. So in the end, Viper Gen 3 is definitely a lot more form than function. It looks impressive, it sounds impressive, but in all three categories, survival, utility, self-defense, it's just kind of mediocre, to tell the truth. With that said, I still really love this knife. It's a gorgeous knife that feels good in hand, and uh, I hope that this review has been helpful. If you do decide to go pick one up for yourself, it is the Schrade Viper Generation 3.